after spending 4 full days together and then just seeing each other 3 hours ago as he dropped me off at the airport. I get home, I put down my suitcase, and I turn on the computer because we needed to meet right away for another episode of Fireball the Gazebo. How's it going, Vince?
It's going great, buddy. It's good to see you again. It's been a long time, as you said. Yes, I mean, obviously, the shame of it is we were together for this whole time. We worked on a ton of like miniature related stuff. Playing some miniature games, painting many things.
Mm-hmm.
We played some card games, little Magic, right? We did a little draft and stuff like that. The one thing we did not get to do, role playing games. So I'm feeling the tank is low. I need this to recharge my RPG battery.
Yeah, I am the same way. Usually at least one night of VinciCon when the 5 of us are hanging out together, I'm like, it's like at 9 o'clock or so, 8 or 9 o'clock. I'm like, man, we could run a real fun one shot tonight. I always feel that itch. One of these years, we're going to have to get back to doing it because we did it once before. We did talk a little bit about RPG art and some other stuff about editions, but we didn't dig into it. So you're right. Let's break the seal and have the Gazebo Boys join us in our discussion today. I see you wrote down 140 orcs.
I did, as a matter of fact.
It's a lot of orcs.
It is a lot of orcs. So the PCs in my group are moving on to another stage of their journey. The adventure that they've decided to pursue is this War of the Four Barons going on in Ulgarth. It's sort of it's like an adjacent kingdom that's in a sort of ongoing civil war. And they have lots of reasons to be in there. Somebody's trying to find parts to fix an accordion. All the critical things you would want to do. The usual things. Yeah. The usual things that draw heroes on adventure.
Right. Yeah.
And so they get over there and they get to this small village where they know people where they had been before. And that village is quiet. It's like so far north that the war hasn't really touched them. And it's like nice, peaceful, idyllic country village, right? And what I know is that actually there's a lot of orcs that live nearby and they're only kept at bay by the sort of forces of the kingdom, which are now not at all guarding the borders anymore, which have now been all drawn inward toward, around the capital where the wars are happening. And so I'm like, well, their PCs are all like level 8 to 10. Again, second edition, so varied levels, right? But they're all roughly that area. And I was like, let's see what they're capable of. I'm like, let's get a real orc horde here, right? Like what it says you're supposed to use in the monster manual. Okay.
For hordes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that night they're out camping. They have a circus. Did I mention they have a circus? They're starting a circus.
I mean, goes on straight on par with the accordion craftsmanship and repair.
Yeah. This has become this started on a whim because the bard, who is a circus performer, decided he actually wanted to start a formal circus. And the whole rest of the group just got immediately on board with this. They are now they recruited a bunch of people. They're using their followers that they get at level 9 to become circus performers and guards and for the circus and stuff like that. They went out and bought a bunch of wagons. So now they're just part of a traveling circus. So they're taking their traveling circus into a civil war. Okay. That is the current state of our game.
We need to bring people's spirits up a little bit. It's a pretty down and dreary location. It sounds like, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And that was their argument too. And I just this isn't the topic, but we're going to, in the future, I want to talk about side gigs and PCs running businesses and stuff. Right. And this is so quickly becoming that thing where it's obvious it's going to be a thing in the game. They're going to this is now going to be the group's thing. And I'm excited for it. But at any rate, they're out camping. They performed that night as a circus. It went very well. And I'm like, so they made some checks. They see that there's eyes in the darkness. The people who are on watch, they get up. They start waking everybody else up. And sure enough, it's a big orc horde coming down to wipe out this village. Okay. So my PCs, of which there are, again, 7, are now up against. And I'm like, you can't see how many orcs it is because they're standing in the, it's pitch black. It's nighttime, all that kind of stuff. Right.
It's the reflections of them, their torches, and then
there's just bunches of them, so you can't really count. You just know there's a sea of them, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what there actually is 140 of them, okay, plus leaders and all that thing, spellcasters and that kind of stuff. And it's just a great chance for them to cut loose. It's certainly a dangerous scenario, And like I think one or two people ended up either getting like very badly injured or went down. But in the end, they were victorious and they felt really good about it, right? It's a chance for like the spellcasters to really rip, if
Oh
that makes
yeah,
sense. Just like start letting them fireballs go into orcs where like it doesn't matter if the orcs make their save, they're dead either way,
yeah,
right? Like there's no getting out of the amount of damage here. That's how a fireball should feel, right? Now they had to eat one too. The enemies had spellcasters, and so of course immediately the enemies were like, "Oh, okay, you want to play the fireball game? We'll play the fireball game." And they threw one right back at them, right? And then that becomes like mission number one for somebody to go find that spellcaster and
yeah.
kill them.
Now we know what the purpose of the fighter is in this, right?
Right, exactly. So it ended up breaking up like that exactly as you would imagine. One of the fighters went after like the leader, sort of the war leader who's like a big tough, super tough orc, and like the spellcasters were acting as artillery in the background, and a couple people, the rogues and stuff were trying to like sneak around and pop the spellcasters, and just all sorts of fun things like that. It turned out like a really fun fight. Didn't take an incredibly long time, but it was like a heck of a huge fight. And it really, I think it was a great transition moment because it felt like they're all basically getting to name level, if you know
Mm,
what I mean, like level 9, 10, where you're supposed to be like relatively famous. And, saving a whole town from an orc invasion against like effectively an army as anybody in that town would perceive it, um, is a great moment for their legend to help kind of build their story here. And it will
right,
proceed them
right.
in Woolgarth as they get into the rest of their adventures,
And truly
right?
a
As
Spartan
word spreads.
moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was cool. It was a good time. And now it sets them. Now they're like, well, we can't. Are there more orcs? Do we have to go find where these came from? How big is the main army? We can't just leave this town undefended, like because they emotionally care about a lot of these NPCs since they've now met them multiple times. They've been very friendly NPCs and stuff. So, which is good. I want them to care about that stuff, and that sends the sort of what was a meandering adventure because they were just like kind of going in here to check stuff out. Into it gives them a direction they can grab onto.
Yeah, and even if it's not something that becomes a new direction or thread line, or like you're like you don't want them to get sidetracked too much, and you can be like they're scattered to the four winds. That's not to say that the orcs wouldn't rise again at some point, but you feel like their leadership is completely crumbled, and you're not worried about them coming back. But it's a string you can pull later, and now that they're connected to this village, it's an easy way to pull them or get them more invested in decisions that they make. And it's all because of 140 orcs. God bless
Many
the
orcs.
the minion rules of fourth edition. One of the best things that fourth edition ever did was just to codify that. And it wasn't even like the simplistic of one shot, one hit point or whatever kills them. It was more of like it was a more tangible way for a next generation of D&D to think about dealing with fighting a lot of things. And a lot of things is this cool factor in and of itself. And there's a difference between something like a minion where you could fight 20 minions as opposed to 80 level 1 goblins when you're level 8. They pose next to no threat. But you just like can't not hit them. So
Sure.
there's value in both. And that's maybe a discussion
Yeah,
for another
I
time.
will say I like the verisimilitude that like the orcs are the orcs. They are what they are, right? They're
Right.
just guys. They're tough, brutish, scary things. Like if they land an axe hit on you or crit you or something like that, it's going to hurt, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
strong. They wield big weapons, and but like ultimately they have 8 hit points. Like that's what it is. That's an
Yeah.
orc, right? They're
Right.
basic like a normal human could go and fight an orc and walk away a victor. That could happen, right? But the
Yeah.
orc could also kill the person. And there's something nice to me about it not being too gamified, about it like existing as a thing in the
Yeah.
world, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Something about that. Like I like the anchor point of like, yeah, that's just an orc. It's basically like a person, but maybe more brutish or whatever. And they are what they are. They have what they have. If you can kill 140 of them because of spells or whatever, good
Absolutely.
job on you.
That should be what you'd be doing. Yeah, I've always been the kind of person that is not a fan of video game RPGs that level scale with you
Oh
because it
God,
just
yeah.
like it doesn't feel like a real living world that things just are what they are. It's no, everything reacts to you, and that's how powerful and how much damage it can do. And I think in an edition, you're playing second edition in this campaign where death and dropping is more serious, healing is a much more um, finite resource that they swing at your fighter 18 times and 2 get through. Those 2 matter.
That's right.
And
Every hit really does matter.
yeah,
Yes.
and so the
People
system
do
in the
not have a
rule,
lot of hit points. We have like level 8, 9, 10 characters with like 30 hit points, 25 hit points,
yeah,
35 hit points.
so it all
You get hit
counts.
with an axe for like a D12 plus 2. It's like, oh God.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Cool, cool, cool. We got a couple of interesting bits of news today we wanted to run through. I saw this bottom one. I want to start with this one come through the socials feeds as I follow Joe Manganiello on Instagram, and I saw some familiar faces and names on there. Do you have more of the lowdown on what that entailed?
Well, I mean, so yes, this was posted on two different people's sort of Insta and across various socials, both on, Joe Manganiello himself posted it. Your friend Joe, as we all know.
Yeah, sure. My close and personal friend.
Close and personal friend. You painted something for him. That kind of counts.
Yeah.
And but as well, Dan Ayub. I really do not. I've never heard anybody pronounce his last name. So Ayub. He's the new head of basically D&D. He's the one we talked about previously. It took over. He shared it as well. And the caption was the two of them with Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. Laura Hickman was there as well. And it just said, we're back. So this is the team behind Dragonlance. Obviously, they were at the Wizards of the Coast headquarters. That's where the picture was taken. So one would hope that that crew being at Wizards of the Coast headquarters and Dan talking about how he wants to go more across different media means that like a Dragonlance show or a movie or a project of some kind, some major media project would be back in some way. Frankly, I would be happy with anything. It's an
Yeah.
absolute crime that we have not gotten the Dragons cycle really adapted in a serious way. Like there was there was like one animated shot at it, but we're not going to talk about that. It's just such a great story and like so absolutely iconic in the history of D&D and would make a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful television series or movie or anything.
Yep. Yeah, there are a lot of amazing fantasy book series that I don't think necessarily translate well to the silver screen or the small screen. This is not one of them. This is one that's like made for that. There's so many like
100%.
visually gripping areas and moments and scenes and battles and memorable characters and like and a relatively basic storyline. It's that doesn't mean it's not good. It means it's really good. It has to be good for it to be so straightforward. And actually kind of ties into our topic today as well about character arcs, and we can get into that. But having Margaret and Tracy involved in this, I mean, that just is so exciting as you have the masters, the original authors, if they have their hand in whether it's developing a script, whether it's, that would be phenomenal. Or maybe it's Joe collaborating on this a new Dragonlance book. It could be that too. I don't mean a novel. I mean like for D&D. That would be the least exciting.
That would be the least exciting. I'm hoping for some kind of media project because I want other people, especially maybe of a younger generation, who maybe haven't had the chance to experience that stuff or haven't read the original book. I still have my like annotated chronicles, which by the way, if you can get your hands on, I would highly recommend anybody that like the sort of DVD commentary behind the scenes on the creation of that is like amazing. So it's really great.
Good luck tracking one down. I tried for quite a while after like, was it a year ago or 2 years ago?
Yeah,
I was looking
showed
at
it
yours.
to you and you were like, you tried to find it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very expensive. I still have my original paperback versions with the OG, the Chronicles series art, which are just some of the most iconic fantasy art of all time, in my opinion. And those are really expensive if you can get the first edition ones.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it was when it was shared on social, so many of the responses to it were very negative, and I'm just like, man, maybe just like be happy for once, people. Like, just
right.
Let's see what it is, and then if it's bad, then we'll be sad. But if it's good, then we'll be happy. Like, let's just wait here.
That's not how the internet works.
I guess this is true. So, anyways, that was one little bit of news. But there's others.
Right.
Okay, so next one is a little more indie. Kobold Press is releasing their Riverbank RPG. It's coming to retail. This had been announced back at I think Gamma Trade Expo. I think it's from the first time they talked about it. But at any rate, it's finally coming out to retail, which is awesome. On November 15th, so not too long now after this goes up. It's like a cozy RPG, if that makes sense. So
Mm.
it's not really about fighting. It's what you think it is. So like your little forest creatures, and you're going on adventure and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's um, anthropomorphized sort of forest creatures, as it were. And yeah, it's just a really cool world. It's got really beautiful art. If you look up Riverbank, it's just like they did a wonderful job of really making it feel uh, whole, I guess is what I would
Mm.
say. Like it's got a very coherent vision. There you go. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's really important on those very distinct kind of stylings of a game to have a really clear and art directed vision that's cohesive throughout. So yeah, that sounds great. I'm interested to see how that goes. Everyone likes a good secret of Nim now and then, right? Am I right?
That's right. Yeah, I look. I love like cute forest animal kind of storytelling and stuff like that. Um, and like I like games with combat, but I like games without combat sometimes too. You can it can be both. It's fine.
Hmm.
Then lastly, a little bit of a completely expected, but just unfortunate. I don't even know what to call it. Project Sigil, which is like the 3D virtual tabletop that seemed doomed to fail from the beginning, or at least that's how I perceived it. And the first time I looked at it, I was like, well, this isn't going to work. Well, it's not going to work, it turns
Oh,
out. It will be sunset in 2026. Goodbye, we barely knew ye. So there you
no.
go.
Yeah, when everyone's stuck at home for COVID, that's when some of those, like, it was all trying to strike when the iron's hot, but not everything will rise to the top. So, not that that didn't bring new innovation in virtual tabletop gaming and tools and that kind of stuff. I think it very much did. And even some that we use in our in-person games, that there are still some good, valuable
Sure.
tools to use.
I
But
mean,
that's not one of them.
no, I mean, we should do a whole show on virtual gaming at some point. I think that'd be a good thing to dig into.
Hmm.
Um, But as you know, I mean, we obviously all did it over the pandemic, but still, I hate it. I'll start there. There's my first shot across the bow for that show. I hate it, but if it's the only option, it's better than not playing,
That's
right?
exactly right. That's how I feel
And
too.
I don't know what you don't need a big heavy tool for it, honestly.
No, you really don't. I feel like a lot of people just like finding there's a term for like minimum viable product. Maybe that was it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
finding the minimum viable product so it's streamlined about making it make it as close to in person as possible. And the more layers of shit you put on top, the less it feels true to the core of what you're doing together, which is communal storytelling.
agreed.
All right, Vince, let's just dig right into this sucker. We are going to talk today about character arcs. And we think that this is something that sometimes gets brushed over, or you've figured it out, but you haven't had the actual out loud conversation with your players, with yourself. If you're creating your own campaign, if you're coming up with your own story, if you're working with your players to find the kind of game they want to play, or even you've been playing one for a while, if you haven't had this conversation with yourself and like kind of laid things out, and if you haven't had it with your players, you can kind of get lost at sea. I had to cough. I was trying to stifle the cough, and then it just came out sounding like I was gonna cry. Uh,
We're lost at sea.
I lost at sea. So yeah, well, Vince, why don't you kick us off in kind of our synopsis of why we wanted to talk about this and what this entails?
Well, John, part of the reason I wanted to talk about this was because I've got a thorn in my paw on
Mm-hmm.
this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because, look, obviously, storytelling and like having characters in a plot, most of the time, the character over you watch a movie or read a book or a television show, the character evolves over the
Yeah.
course of that thing. It's not always the case. There are like characters that don't change much in stories like that. It can happen. But like 95% of the time, it's about somebody going on a journey,
Yes.
right? They start at they friends become enemies, enemies become friends. Little journey, little novel, right? You know, like I've watched so many people make characters and play characters over relatively long campaigns and just not ever really change. Like
Yeah.
they were a hard-nosed person who was like obsessed with their faith and gave no ground to anybody else at level 1, and then at level 15 they're still that person. And they haven't gotten more into that and become like worse, nor they've gotten better. They're just, well, my character wouldn't do that. And it's like, well, your character's been through a lot. Has anything changed?
Yeah.
Okay. That's like the most common question I want to fire back at somebody with whenever they run to that. And I'm like, over time, you're supposed to grow and change. And so like, and there's different kinds of arcs, obviously, right? We
Yes.
need to say like most heroes in D&D aren't going on the traditional like hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like the Luke Skywalker, hero's journey, right? Because they don't like resist the call to adventure most of the
Right.
time.
Right. That's
Like they're starting partway around the circle. They're like ready
yes.
to go. But
Speed this up. Yeah.
yeah. So you've got this spectrum, right? Of like you're a commoner who found a sword and you like killed an orc accidentally when they were attacking your village.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. The old thrust upon you
Yes,
situation, right?
adventure is thrust upon you.
Yep.
Out to like uh you were born the predestined hero of the realm. You are the dragon reborn and will be the, god king sorcerer emperor who comes and saves us all.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. The
What's the line
predetermined.
at the end of Mistborn? Like in the third one. It seems unfortunately I am after all the chosen one. I think that's like the line that opens the chapter. Right.
Yes. Yes. And there's tons of examples of both of these. And what's interesting is that it's a spectrum, but it's usually pretty easy to, whether it's a TV show, a book, a movie, any media that you follow, video game, to identify this very early on, because it's usually a pretty core part to the introduction to the story. And that doesn't mean that it's a linear path, and maybe we can get into that a bit more too. But you can tell at the beginning, Luke Skywalker had no idea. I'm a fucking moisture farmer, like, oh, I don't know.
Right.
I don't
He
know.
wanted to go buy, power converters at Tashi Station. He wasn't thinking about blowing up the Death Star.
Mm-hmm. Or on the flip side, this may be an obscure example, but maybe some of the goody peepees out there, that's not what you are, gazeboids. Maybe the gazeboids out there would recognize this one from Final Fantasy I from the Nintendo Entertainment System. You are literally called the Warriors of Light, and the game starts with you getting a flash that you must unite the crystals in order to save the world. Like, boom, minute 1, you are the chosen ones. And there's great examples of both. And typically you fall into one or the other, right? Like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, that's
the hobbits are like adventures were thrust upon them, right?
Yes,
they didn't want to do
exactly.
this, but they became the heroes, right?
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. But yeah, I think an important part as well, the next bullet point you put on our document, is that nowhere along that spectrum or wherever you put your line in the sand of here's the core of the adventurer's journey is wrong.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I think that like ultimately people get a little wrapped around the axle with this. I think like they come to one side or the other quite easily. And like, I think we're going to see this more. There's a couple of break points here, right? So one is how you start, and then the next is how you grow. Okay. So, and I think both should be talked through or discussed as to like the type of game you're going for in session 0.
Yes.
Okay. And
Absolutely.
we'll get to session 0 in a moment. But like with the how you start thing, I think that you can ultimately, like, you can have a mix of somebody who was like, quote unquote, destined for greatness in the party.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who like, oh, I was just some guy. And then like life happened.
I was his butler. I was the Great One's butler. I'm Alfred, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so yes, I gave a reference here in our document to Batman and Superman because I find both of the arcs interesting, right? Batman and Superman are like two of the most well-known characters and heroes in the world, right? Okay. And Superman, you would think like, he's born into incredible power, right? By being sent to Earth. The yellow sun feeds him and he's like a god effectively, right? But like, that's not actually what makes him a hero. Okay. What makes him a hero is growing up with two kind-hearted farmers who couldn't have kids in Smallville, Kansas, where he learns about what it means to be a good person. and like why you should try to help people and care about your fellow man, right?
Right.
That's what makes him a hero. Okay, like his very simple, humble beginnings, his parents. Whereas, like both characters, their parents made them heroes, just one accidentally. So, Batman's like born into wealth, but he's not out there. He's not intending to go punch vigilantes or to punch criminals. I'm sorry, to be a vigilante. But his parents get shot in an alley when he's 8 years old, and that just like boom, and that's adventure thrust upon him,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And both of them go on like extreme arcs, if depending on which comic series you went, which continuity and time, but like they all have like really extreme arcs as to where they go throughout that journey of like how they deal with that suffering. I don't know if you've ever watched Batman Ghost of the Phantasm,
I have
like
not.
the movie from the original animated series. I mean, it's first of all, it's like the best Batman movie. But secondly, there's a point in it where he falls in love, where Bruce Wayne falls in love, okay,
Uh-huh.
with someone who he thinks could actually make it work. And he's like, he goes to his parents' grave. This is like early in his career, a couple of years in as Batman. And he goes to his parents' grave and he's like crying and he bends down and he like apologizes to them because he's not fighting crime as much. He's like, it just doesn't hurt anymore as much
Mm.
because he found somebody, right?
Oh.
That like actually filled the hole in his heart that his parents left. At any rate, I'm not going to spoil it, the movie and what ends up happening, but needless to say, he's still Batman at the end. Um, my point is that like you're like I'm trying to show that like regardless of how you start, it often doesn't matter because how you grow is what's going to end up being the important part, right? So whether you're like destined for greatness or a normal person or something in between, right? It really actually doesn't matter. It's just kind of like the prompt for the
Sure.
hero's journey you're going to go on. Ultimately, what's important, it's just like it's the launching point, right? Like you're the destined hero, but then you fail is just as interesting as you succeed or something, right?
Right. It's still a big blip on the radar, which makes it interesting. And then what happens after that is really the opportunity to be surprised or take things in a different direction or see how the characters grow or react. And I don't want to underplay the value of really identifying this and communicating it clearly. Again, this is going to the session 0. Maybe we dig into
Yeah,
that
I think we
now.
jump into session 0 because this is I think one of the most important parts of this discussion.
Yes. And to get our full breakdown on what is a session 0 and what makes a successful session 0, go back to our episode probably a couple months ago at this point, or a month ago. I don't know how time works. And check that one out. But session 0 is just in a nutshell is where you all get together for the very first session of the campaign before you start playing. You're not actually starting the campaign in this session 0. And if you're able to lay out what I would call the movie trailer version of your campaign to your players, right? In this movie trailer, you are explaining the basic idea of where they are or where they came from. Again, in generics, they need to have full ownership of the characters and what's happening in the world that they are going to be kind of pulled into, whether they were destined to or whether by some weird twist of fate. So they can really wrap their mind around your world and the origin of this interesting story. From there, they get inspiration. They get to get their juices flowing. They feel the creativity. And that is really a strong tie to them coming up with a character that they feel fits. If they don't have any idea of where they'll be, or they just have a generic, we're playing in kind of a nice world where there's giants and then there's a human village and you're in the human village, like that's generic. That doesn't tell me about, like what really pulls the characters into the world that helps me envision my character there. And when you talked about the growth and the journey, what's so important about this intro to your character's arcs is having a buy-in and a strong understanding of where you begin, because you can't grow if you were so wishy-washy from session 1, right? If it's just about
Agreed.
my character is my class and the specific kinds of thing that my class does, that is
I am
so
Elf
hard
Ranger.
to grow.
Cool.
Yeah, I am Elf Ranger that likes to use a bow and has a pet bear cub. That's not a character. That's it's a generic archetype. So let
That
them
initial session
understand that.
0,
Yeah.
yeah, is also when, like, you can if you're gonna lean to one of the extremes
Mhm.
or have a particular hook, that's also when you can set that up, right? So, like, your example about Final Fantasy 1 of, like, you are the warriors of light, like, that's what you would do in the session 0. You would
Yes.
give them that dream,
Yes.
right? And you would say, like, you're all fully aware of this as you start. So when you make your character, you're making your character knowing this thing, right? That you are all destined in some way, or at least, you all think so. Okay, or whatever. Or maybe you agree with it, you don't agree with it, you're happy about it, you're not happy about it. I'm not here to tell you that. But I'm telling you, you all had this dream and this is fact,
Right.
right? And so, like, or you go the opposite direction, right? It's like, okay, no, the basic story of this is, and we did a game like this once where it was actually set in Thunder Rift, which is like the setting for the basic D&D stuff,
Mm.
like the original box sets and stuff. But we did a game like this where we were all just people in a town. Okay. And it was like, and then things happened, attack happens, and we're like the people left from our town.
Right.
Okay. And
Yep.
it was like, well, we got to go find someone, find something, right? We have nothing else here left. So that was like the definition of we were just normal people living a life, and adventure was thrust upon us. Right. And like the GM was very clear that like what you're portraying is the only survivors of this attack.
Right. Yes.
Right. And, there's also like something in the middle. What was it? Wheel of Time, that adaptation that Amazon did. Okay. Like, again,
Mhm.
I know not a lot of people don't like that, and that's fine. Like, whatever. You can not like the show. I don't care. It was fine, I thought, but it wasn't great. At any rate, the whole premise of that was like, well, one of you is a
Right.
destined hero, but we're not sure which one. I always liked that kind of a setup. I think that's fun where it's a little bit of both, right? So you've got like
Uh-huh.
kind of the adventures thrust upon you, but also there's a bit of destiny at the same time. So like that's sort of a neat mix, right? Where it's like, well, somebody here's special,
Right.
but I don't know
Any
who.
anytime that you can like fold in a little murder she wrote like murder mystery where they're not sure of something but like they have access to information because it's one of them and even they don't know and like they're trying to read the tea leaves on the like all right but yeah but like when you like woke up in the middle of the night to the wolf owl so maybe that means you're the chosen one, like letting them get in their own heads and thinking about stuff because that is the stuff you grab onto as a DM. Like I did not intend that at all, but that actually is pretty sweet. So we're gonna make that canon, as they say.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah, and you're not like beholden to either one of these or wherever you fall in the arc through your entire storyline. It could start as nobodies and maybe a big twist in the final boss of your first act of your show or your series is them finding that it was never just happenstance ever all along. You've been chosen or
Yes.
that kind of a thing. Or as part of your arc and your growth, the nation needs you to be the chosen ones, and you were nobodies, and you've found yourself in the wrong place, the wrong time, enough times that you now stand at the seat of the king, and they need you to be
Right.
what they want you to be. You know,
You find out the destined prophecy was all a lie, just meant to be hype and to build up and to keep the commoners pacified that there's hope. And you're actually nobody, and you're a sacrifice for a giant dinosaur that lives outside the kingdom that requires innocent people to be fed to him every 40 years or something. Like, who knows? Life can go
right,
take you lots of weird places.
right,
Which leads us rather nicely to the next part of this. So I said there's like how you start, but then really the arc is how you grow,
mm,
right? And that's where I think the real difference of opinion lies. I think most people are like, yeah, whatever, whatever with the first stuff. Like I've told probably most people have played characters across the spectrum, right? Of how they start. But like the the planned arc, as you said in the notes, versus discovered arc, right? I think there's some people that really have different opinions about this of like how much should you plan your arc? How much should the arc just kind of evolve and happen? Like come what may, based on the thing. How involved are you as the player in being able to shape your own arc versus like you can say, I want to do this, and then I want to do this, and then I want to discover this. Okay, or whatever. Like this is my plan for myself. Think of like some super type A person who's like, I've got my 10-year plan, right? I'm going to do
Right?
this. I'm
Yeah.
going to go to college. Then I'm going to get my degree. Then I'll get my master's. And then I'm going to get married and have 3 kids. And then blah, 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 blah. Right. And it's like, okay, got it. So that's a planned arc, right? Versus like the oops, life happened. You got to college and then failed your first class and washed out and realized that this wasn't for you anyways. And so you got into a crypto startup and it's just like, wait, what? This is not where you thought your life was going. So, you discovered that, right? So I think this is actually the area of like a lot of fertile discussion of where this goes. And again, just to lay it down, I don't think there's a right answer here, but I think it's something you can still set up in session 0.
Right. I think to me, one of the biggest takeaways for this whole episode is not one is right or wrong, but they need to be active decisions that you've made and that it gives you direction and you feel a level of confidence moving forward because you've identified, you've clarified it to yourself, and that will help you so much in decision making, and it will help clarify things for your players. Because players that are tentative because they do not understand their characters, the situation, the world, where the trajectory of things are going, they're not going to be able to evolve because it's hard to get beyond the 2-dimensional character that way. But okay, so do you have a preferred DMing style in this, in planned versus discovered arcs?
I do. I really do. In my estimation, I actually don't like anybody over planning their arc. I want them to have input. Like I think I would come down in the middle on collaboratively. Okay. So but like to the point of where I want your ideas and suggestions, and those usually take the form. I wrote this in the doc, and I think this is worth sort of laying out. But like I think those usually take the form of goals.
Yeah.
Okay. By you telling me your goals, like almost every game we run, we want like 2 short-term and 2 long-term goals. Most of our GMs who GM in our group also, regardless of what we're playing, ask for like 2 short-term goals, 2 long-term goals, and 2 allies and 2 enemies.
Mhm.
Okay. So people you have a past with in some way. And I think that you can learn a lot about the character and like what they want from their goals, if that makes sense. Like that's that when they set a goal, that's them communicating to you what they want their arc to be. Right? Like I'm trying to find what became of my long lost sister. Okay.
Mhm.
Who went missing when I was like 13. All right. Well, that's a plot. That's not necessarily how your character is going to go, but I understand what the journey you're on here, right? You're on a journey of like, so you got to translate it. You got to take the step, right?
Mhm.
The character arc isn't find the sister or don't find the sister. That's a plot, right? The character arc is how do you deal with that loss and come to be like a whole person given what you didn't have, right? Or whatever. And what do you do if that doesn't come to pass or if it does, and so on and so forth, right? That's the arc that's around
Mhm.
it. You can read in between the lines from their goals what they want their arc to be. And what I usually like to do is I kind of take that and I think about, okay, how am I going to work some of those in as story elements,
Mhm.
right? And then how am I going to throw some wrenches, some spanners in the works, right? To then make them make some different decisions, grow in a different way, right? It's like those people who make trees, like bonsai trees, like, grow in like really specific ways by like tying them down and stuff like that. Like the tree wants to grow some way, but you can like apply some pressure to get it to change a little bit, that
Yeah.
kind of.
Yep. Yeah, I think that, and that's so valuable for a character, a player to feel heard and to feel that, like, oh, I'm having some impact, and the decisions I make are changing the course of what we're doing, which is how you get players invested in your game. And I think that it's like one of those things where what I like to do, ideally, it's once a session, but it's like one player at the table per session that they are put in a situation where they can't give you an answer within 5 seconds. Because if they can give you an answer, no matter what the situation or the question is, if they have to go, that means that you've got them thinking. And that's all you're trying to do with working in these arcs into your plot, is to get them to like pause And that's when they get their wheels turning, that's where you get the character growth to happen because you put
Yeah,
them in a specific situation.
I'll give you a good example of this. So one of the characters in my Tuesday group, the paladin, was like the sort of story was all about like them having a somewhat crisis of faith, like
Mhm.
leaving their order. They're like a wandering paladin and not sure what the right thing was and what god they wanted to become part of. Like they wanted to effectively find their faith again, right? It's not like they lost faith in all the gods, but they kind of lost the mission statement. Yeah.
Sure.
And so I made sure that there was lots of different clerics that could be potential role models for them that they met along the way of different
Okay.
faiths. All right. Both good and bad, by the way. I don't know. I'm keeping the door open. Who knows?
Sure.
Maybe they want to become an oath breaker, a fallen paladin. Yeah, it's fine. Um, and this last game, like the character finally, like after thinking about it for a long time and working through a bunch of sort of decisions and happening having what happened in the story hit them. Yeah, decides finally to like, no, I need to lean into my faith completely. And so again, we're playing second edition, dual classes over and declare.
Hmm.
Starts over.
Hmm.
Okay. Like begins the journey into faith completely. And so like that's a great mechanical manifestation of that character arc coming to fruition, right? Of like them rediscovering their faith and what they really believed in and why they're carry why they're everybody believes in the gods, but there's a difference between somebody who just believes in the god and somebody who follows the god, right? Like there's a difference. And so I thought that like I like when those character arc moments can actually manifest in some way,
Yeah.
mechanically or narratively in the story in some like tangible physical way that people can grab onto.
That
And
really
usually that comes a lot through like exactly what you just said when you make them pause for a decision and
uh-huh.
they suddenly make a different decision than they would have 5 levels or 10 sessions or however you want to measure it.
Right. Yeah. And that's such a great feeling. I think anytime that you can tie these um evolutions, changes, growth of your character into something kind of crunchy, into something that manifests in the rules, it's a really big aid to the players. So if you're a player and you want to show this growth, or you like have this cool moment of realization, do what Vince's player did and try to find like, oh, when I level next, what am I going to do? Or the next time we're out at the shops, it would just make sense that they would now carry a whole bandolier of empty vials, right? For, whatever they're collecting
Yeah,
and stuff
sure.
like that. Like find a way that you can be the change you want to see in the world, right? If you want your character to do these things, be proactive in that, because it'll help remind you in the session. It'll help show itself at the table, because one of the hardest things for most players is there is no inner monologue in D&D. You have to overact like you're in a play where like you have to say to the world in a more over the top
Right.
way, so everyone understands it, so the DM can see it, so the other players can see it, so the NPCs can react to it. This whole everything's inside my head, and going back to Batman, like that doesn't exist. So how do you make that out in the real world? And then as a DM, you have some cool tools at your disposal too. Maybe they're too hesitant on like doing a multi-class or doing a big change like that. Well, have them get some interesting boon. Have them get some
Right.
interesting magical weapon. Have them get something that you've giving them a prop. You're giving them a prop to kind of like signify that change, and that'll allow them to feel more comfortable in this change and evolution of their character.
Yeah. And by the way, the other thing I'd say is as a GM, when this is happening, you need to watch for this and like lean into it when your characters start to go down a road and you're like, okay, they're changing. They're leaning into something that happened. So here's what I mean. You're going to put moral decisions and things are going to happen. They're going to save people, lose people, grow, win battles, lose battles, and so on in front of them, right? And theoretically, that should change who they are.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of the thing in a nutshell, right? But like throughout the way, there's going to be a ton of little micro decisions that are made and like little things that just happen incidentally, where fate takes a hand. A random magic item gets rolled, or a random discovery or a certain NPC that they glom onto or whatever. Like, so it can be something very physical or very narrative, like very rules or very narrative-y. And when that happens, you've got to like make sure you lean into it. So again, in my current game, I had one character, player doesn't who I know is listening to this podcast, talking about you, yes, who doesn't have it didn't really have like a huge amount in the way of goals before the game. Okay, which is fine. This player doesn't normally generate like big goals that they want to do. That's not really what they're into, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like that's okay. But they ended up getting the magic item that was like reminded them, like connected them to the royalty that they're descendant from. Like they're the inheritor of this long lost kingdom. And then they're the ones that then got in the fight with the Lizardman Shaman King and got the big crown. One of the things the crown does is slowly shift your alignment in a particular way.
Oh.
Okay. Which wasn't that far from where they were.
Mm.
And so like that happened and they failed their save and their alignment moved the step. And I'm like, again, I'm not ever going to tell you how you have to role play your alignment. Like this is what's happened. You act how you feel is appropriate, right? Like I'm not over here telling you got to go punch kids or something in the face. But the character is like leaned into this arc and it'll just come up in conversation sometimes, like anytime royalty is being discussed. So I am very fascinated by, we're going into a civil war of a bunch of barons who believe themselves worthy of being king, all while this character is like now in possession of multiple magic items that make him think he is like the worthy ruler of this old vast empire, which included this territory. Right.
Nothing bad can happen from this.
Yeah. And I'm like really excited to see where this goes. Right. And he's stepping into the arc, right? Like his character is changing in the way he interacts with the world and the things he says and the decisions he makes. And I like that. And that's all just happenstance.
Yeah.
Right? Like little adventure. He responded to it. I saw he was responding to it. So I threw another breadcrumb in the path. Right. And so on. And that's a lot of what this is, right? Like you see it, you see them changing, you see them reacting positively. Okay, you toss another breadcrumb down. They keep following. Let's keep going. Right. That kind of thing.
As long as you're trying to keep your antenna open to what the players grasp onto, which is in and of itself, it is a learned, practiced skill because you're managing a million things at the same time while running a session, and keeping your eyes and ears open and even like watching facial expressions and changes in your players. Make a forward note to yourself, like on a piece of paper, like so you can remember those things, because those are the things that you may lose in the moment after, like in the middle of a hectic fight or something. Your brain is overpowered with all the other things you need to do to remind yourself to like, I'm going to try to make a note to myself. Sometime in the next 2 or 3 sessions, we're going to circle back to that in a fun way and see what happens. And one of the last things I wanted to bring up in this was when you mentioned the difference between plot and arcs, and a character arc specifically. I think is a really important thing to kind of codify and help players who are daydreaming up the campaign they want to run, the story they want to run. And I've seen this as a pitfall so often because it takes a bit of passion and motivation to come up with your own campaign. And you get so in love with your ideas, your plot, your plan, that you just assume that all the players around your table are going to hear you explaining this in amazing monologues throughout the first 3 to 5 sessions of your campaign, and they're going to love it as much as you love it, and therefore they're just going to want to be along for the ride for every step of the plot in your journey. And it never works that way. You have that core plot that brings the story along, and they're your guideposts that allow you to make sure you're going roughly in the right direction. But you always look for an interesting side windy trail or a shortcut, or take the ford the river instead, or whatever. And all of those sidetracks are based on what we're talking about here with your characters. So I think structure is very important. I go ape shit, pull out my hair crazy when a DM is like flying by their seat of their pants, because you're not gonna pull a fast one on me. I will know real quick. that you're not prepping and you don't have what the world is doing while I'm not on screen. The world should still be moving. The plot, the interesting parts that we attach to need to still be going on. But then we focus on what we're doing, the choices we make that interact with that. So in kind of answer the question I asked you, where do you fall? I think it's a really fine line to walk. It's an art form again, but you, like anything, you just need to practice doing that. Here's my plan. I'm always open to what the characters do that develop into their arcs and their story.
Yeah. I've got two thoughts. So, one, I've played under a GM who basically just wanted to write a novel. Okay.
Mm.
And the characters were there incidentally, right? You know what I mean? It just like completely like what happened in the plot and the story was just we could have been there or not, right?
Yes.
It could have been anybody. You know what I mean? You're just like hero number 3 in this particular adventure. And
Uh-huh.
that's terrible. Like it just feels awful, right? Because the world isn't reacting to you. That's the other thing. Like you mentioned that the world should be going on when you're not on screen, and I agree. But the world should also be reacting to the PC's presence in it, right? Like where they can feel that oh, something they did here changed or mattered, and who they are because of who they are, it matters that they made this choice and not that choice, right? If I can see the rails underneath the car so freaking clearly, I'm just like tuned out instantly,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah, it's
Um,
rough. It's like it's more like playing jazz music. Where it's like there are rules, but it is mostly free form once you
it's
understand the
about the
basics
notes you
of it.
don't play. Yeah.
It's about the notes you don't play.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like no, it's because if the plot just runs and your arcs don't matter and like the characters growing and changing doesn't actually manifest in some way in the game to be important, like get tested to become
Mhm.
relevant in the story that they made choice A instead of choice B, then it's a video game where like you make good and bad moral decisions, but the story doesn't ultimately change, right? So like the Star Wars Online game is a great example of this, where you could be like, oh, you can be a Sith user or a Sith or a bad or a good guy, and I was like, okay, whatever, because it was like I went my like I played that game a bunch, and I had like a soldier or whatever the heck it was called, and he went full evil, just always made the most evil choice, kill the children, do everything, don't care, right, just like whatever. And there's a point in the story where like you retrieve this sort of Death Star, blow up a planet super weapon, right? And you can choose to either like return it to the right people or sell it off for money.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, well, of course I'm going to sell it for money. So I just put this thing out there. And my commanding officer is like, you sold a 50 billion space credit super weapon off to, international terrorists or whatever. And it's like, oh, well. And then they just give me the next mission. And I'm like, okay, great. Right.
If it
Because it's an
matters.
MMO and this is like the one story they wrote. And so it just didn't matter. Right. That's my point. You got to stay away from that. And the way that you stay away from that is by green goblining your players.
Yeah.
Okay. So like Green Goblin, famously, like the very first Spider-Man movie, when he's got, Mary Jane in one hand and the car full of people, the like little trolley full of people or whatever in the other hand. And he's like, choose Spider-Man, right? And he
Mhm.
like drops both of them, right? Like, who are you gonna save? And you should, just as Spider-Man was able to do in that movie, you should be able to like have some very clever out where you can kind of maybe do both or something if you're going to really put a really horrible choice in front of your players.
Yeah. Oftentimes
Um,
at great potential peril to themselves, right? You
yes,
know?
yes, exactly. That's right. But like putting those Green Goblin moments where you make them choose between two things that are potentially in their arc that they care about, that they love, that matter, whatever, yeah, that's like do that. That should happen. Who lives? The village of innocent people you kind of like, but know and care about, but it's like 40 people you kind of know, or the one NPC that you have a romantic interest in, right? Like and like hopefully if what you're actually doing is setting it up so the PC's like choose one primary, but then if they're clever, they can save both and like yay, they're the big heroes. But I mean, maybe not always. Sometimes
Maybe not
people die.
always. Right. Yeah, that's good where like they feel like they're a true hero and they could do both, but because they were down two of the players because they were off saving the one person, actually a half a dozen people in the village did die. So they're like they feel there was victories but at a cost.
What cost?
At what cost? Yeah, I really feel like that back and forth and engagement and making them feel that the world changes around them is it's such a key part of D&D. And I think there's like this is maybe a whole entire discussion for another day, but like there's some core part of that the origins of how you learn to play D&D are not at all typically like that. Like a get started adventure, the
Yeah, sure.
roll through the process. It is you are very much a nameless, faceless, learn the rules kind of a thing. Same thing with Adventurers League. So I think Adventurers League overall was a negative for D&D for the next generation. It's awesome that all these new people got into this game. It's frustrating that like you kind of have to like unlearn a whole bunch of things about the game that you're now excited about to really see what makes it a true role-playing game. And it's not just run it out of the book and playing it like it's a board game kind of a thing.
Yeah, this is the problem with book adventures in general, right? Is they fall into
Right.
this trap really easily.
It is.
And I mean, look, I'll say this. This is like one of my final bullets I have in our notes is that like the GM doesn't owe you a specific arc,
Hmm.
right? Like just because of your goals and who you are and what your plans are for your character and what you wrote in your backstory that you're the destined hero, destined for greatness because of destiny, right?
Hmm.
The GM doesn't owe you that. Okay.
Hmm.
Like if they set up in session 0 that this is the way the story is going to be told and this is what we're doing and this is what I want to see and this is kind of the arc of the campaign, they don't have to like change all of that to suit you. Like you had a discussion, you decided to participate in this, right? That's how you avoid those misalignment of expectations, as we said, is that session 0. But like what the GM does owe you, they don't owe you a specific arc, but they owe you an arc,
Hmm.
right? They owe you a chance to, like, a good GM owes you a chance to grow, to make choices, to like become more of something or less of something,
Hmm.
right? That's because that's ultimately what a lot of this is. Become more caring or less caring, become more engaged with the world or less engaged, right? Become more attached to your friends or less attached to your friends and loved ones, right? Discover the true meaning of friendship, as it were. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
They owe what they owe you is an opportunity.
Yeah, that's
Present
right.
them with the opportunity, not maybe not a specific opportunity, but some opportunity. And this is truly where the balance between players and DMs is so valuable. It really is a yin and yang. The DM owes you an opportunity. You owe the DM your engagement with the opportunities when they happen. If the DM does not give you an opportunity, then you quickly lose interest because you don't feel your decisions matter. If you don't engage with opportunities, the DM feels, why should I keep working hard to give you them when you do not follow any of them? Even if it's you throw it for a loop and you turn it on its head and you don't do it the way at all that I was kind of trying to set you up for to grow. You showed me a different area of growth. Okay, that will then change my next opportunity for you. But they really need to be, the teeter-totter needs to be level where both sides are engaging in this for it to truly work. It is not the responsibility of one side or the other. It's a 50-50 partnership.
100%. Because if you don't respond, this takes us right back to the beginning where I had my complaint, right? Characters who are just like, who never grow, never change. Like the way the decision they would have made at level 1 is the same decision they're making at level 13. And I'm like, wow, you've done a lot of stuff in between then and now, right? And like absolutely nothing about you changed. No decisions, no moral understanding of the world, no attachments, no things you care about, right? Like they're all just exactly the same. And like, yes, there are, as I said, sometimes a few characters where like it's really not about telling a growth arc for them or something,
Mm-hmm.
okay, or them becoming a better person or a worse person or whatever. But that's pretty rare. And most of the time, if you're a GM trying to get your people to grow, what it feels like when they don't respond is that you're just casting pearls before swine, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
you're like, why am I trying? And that then leads you back. What'll then happen is you'll get the book game experience
Yeah.
where it's
Yep.
just like, okay, you guys did the thing, dun 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 dun, everybody gets a level, yay! Here's the magic items. There are appropriate rewards for this level and this time because you completed an adventure of horde size this much, and okay, great. Everybody got their things. Y'all leveled up. Okay, let's do the next video game sequence. Here we go. Pop, 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 pop. This happened irrelevantly of whatever happened last time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And that's why, like, you were trying to set yourself up from success from the beginning, which again, going back to the session 0, is you want to get them engaged and hooked and excited and thinking about finding a character that really would be a cool one to play in this movie trailer that I just watched that you just told me about. Now they're engaged. Now they're going to want to take those opportunities that you present them to. If you don't put the plate in front of them, how do you expect them to eat? So you need to make sure that you're setting them up from the very beginning, and then a lot of it's a lot easier. But it's so much harder to switch midstream if you haven't set that up from the get go. It's possible, but it's a lot of work to do that.
I agree. And when you're running those book adventures, make sure you do riff. When you see opportunities, like the book doesn't need to be dictum. It's not like some sacred text.
No,
Right. So, like, just because you're running a book adventure doesn't mean you can't, like, have an NPC change where they were, decide to go adventure with them, decide to fall in love with a PC, like, do 10,000 different things, right? Let
right?
them skip a whole section because it wasn't in line with what they wanted to do. Because as they've grown and decided that they really care about this town, they were supposed to venture off and go to the castle in the mountains, but they don't want to do that because they're afraid this town might suffer. Okay, well, then skip that part and make a small little section where they do something at the town. Like, great, there you go, right? You don't have to run it like exact plot lines. Use it as like a basis to springboard from.
Yeah, I really enjoy doing that. It's like if I can read through an adventure, I usually tell myself I have to read through it twice. One, to just kind of soak it all in. The second time I read through it, then I get to feel like I can start seeing the matrix. What are the really big points? What are the interesting things? And then I can adapt with the players because I have enough of a core understanding of what really are the nuts and bolts, and all the extra parts, the extra IKEA parts I could toss away at any time, or I can grab them for a totally different section and throw them in here. So, like, using that as something for you to lean on, so you know that you're going to be able to keep moving and having an adventure, but then free forming everything in between to flesh it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Vince, we tackled this one. We got it down. I really am interested, Gazeboids. What's your thoughts about character arcs? Do you have really good examples of character arcs that you've used in your games, the characters that you've played, all that kind of stuff? My dog is whining like mad because he's so hungry. He's never been fed before in his entire life. If you ask him, that's his answer. But Vince, do you have any parting thoughts for the Gazeboids?
Hey, thank you very much for sticking with us for another episode. Tell your friends, hit like, subscribe, click things that make dings. It is really helpful. Episode 21. We're gonna keep it rolling. We've got so much more to talk about. Love all the interaction. Drop those comments. I really do want to know a character, like a time where somebody had a character that started in place A and ended in place B that was like
Yeah.
really different, and why. Like, I love hearing. I don't like hearing about people's characters. I like hearing about people's character arcs.
Ah, wow. That's a good one. Yeah, if you have a character arc, maybe a higher level, or you have tell us about a very specific moment. Like, this was the catalyst for the change in the character's arc, whether it was a game you were running or a character that you played or someone really cool at your table that you were like, wow, I was really impressed with that. That was really interesting. We love to read those. Thanks again for your support. Like Vince said, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Even if you listen to us on a podcast locale, it helps other people find us. Leave us a rating, however many stars, as long as it's 5. And we're going to be back again next Tuesday with another one. Catch you then.